Are you truly living life or merely surviving? Whether you want more time, more love, more money, or whether you want it all, we want to help you get there. The best part? Everything you want lies on the other side of fear and self-doubt. It's time to take the leap with your host, Tiffany Toombs.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back for this week's episode of Take the Leap. I am your host, Tiffany Toombs, and I am honored to be joined this week by Jenna Monaco. She is a stress management mentor for women, a self-development writer, and a podcast host of Spark Intention. After years of personal work on her own mental health and seeing the benefits of self-healing, Jenna decided to dedicate her life to helping others uncover their life mission and heal themselves. So Jenna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am excited to have you. I connected with Jenna through her podcast, and we had a great chat last week for her podcast. So now we are going to share it over here with my audience as well. So I'm excited to see what comes up today.
Me too.
Cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Your journey into self-healing and why you decided to take the leap into helping others do the same.
Thank you. Thank you for that great bio too. That was very comprehensive. My story starts at a very young age. Didn't know I had anxiety. And I didn't know I had anxiety until after my father had passed away when I was 23. I was actually 24 by the time I realized I was having panic attacks. So part of the reason that I do what I do is because of that long journey of not knowing, because nobody talks about it. And I'm so glad that there's so much more conversation happening around it. And I think that we just need to continue to feed that fire and cultivate that conversation.
Absolutely.
And it's been a journey. And then the reason my father passed away at such a young age, at 60, was because of organ failure. He was an alcoholic. And so being a child of an alcoholic comes with its own set of trauma, its own set of healing that needs to be done. And he was an alcoholic because of the unsaid things that were going on with him, the depression, the anxiety, all of those things that he was using alcohol to numb, and he couldn't get out. And he couldn't put his best self forward. When I was a really young girl, he was the best dad you could have ever asked for. And so growing up, I saw him just slowly fade away, and and I think that was the most painful part, was wanting the dad that I knew he could be, but his mental health wouldn't allow him to be that way. And because there was so much shame around mental health, he didn't feel comfortable getting the help that he needed in order to be in a good space for himself first, and then for his family, for his daughter, for his wife. And so that's my story. And that's kind of why I feel so strongly, why I started the podcast, why I help people with their stress and anxiety now, is because I want to release that shame. There is no shame in mental health. We all have it. And it's something that we all manage every day. And there's no shame in that. It's just like our physical health. It's another aspect, and I call it the trifecta. And it's just my holistic approach to looking at life, and that's your physical body, your mental, and your emotional, spiritual self, whatever you want to call it. All three of those come together in order to be our best selves. And if one is lacking, we're going to see that, we're going to feel that imbalance, and we're going to see that imbalance. And it's really our body's way of saying, hey, we need to address something, but we tend to fight it, or we tend to suppress it. And that's when we get into trying to numb things, using other ways or coping mechanisms that are detrimental to our lives. And so that's kind of as summed up as I can be about my story and why I do what I do. And it's just fills me with such purpose. And it's the one thing that I know a lot about because of my experience. And so
Definitely.
after school, I transitioned into stress coaching specifically for women in business because business is kind of my wheelhouse. And there are so many women in business who are just juggling so much. And we go into business because we want to feel that passion. We want to feel that purpose. And oftentimes it's for freedom of time or things like that. But we find ourselves actually putting ourselves into a box of the exact opposite and burnout and so many other things. And so my mission is really to bring that mental health aspect in with business so that we can cultivate the lives that we are truly inspired to get to. So that's what I do.
Absolutely. And I think it's such important work in even just highlighting, like it's strange to me because I'm in a similar field when people say to me, I didn't even know I had depression or anxiety. I didn't even know that was like a thing. And I think that not knowing and the shame that comes with asking for help and speaking out about it is what creates this never-ending cycle, right? Where your dad got stuck in it and turned to a numbing factor that then led to you taking it on and having it in your life. And, thank goodness that you had the foresight and the self-reflection to be able to make some change so that the cycle doesn't continue through you and that it stops with you.
Yes. And I remember there was a point in high school when my mom said, your life doesn't have to be like this. And that never, ever, ever went away for me. And I remember making a commitment. I was like, come hell or high water, excuse my French, but it is going to end with me. I don't know how, I don't know, but I was like, I'm determined for this cycle to end with me. It stops here. I'm done. And that drive has never gone away. And even talking about it now, it gets so emotional. And I think that's also a huge part of this is like, when you get emotional about something, it's because it matters so much. And it's a beautiful trigger for us to like stop and go, whoa, that's something I have to address. Whether it's, you're figuring out your passion or your purpose and you get emotional about something, that's it, or it's you're talking about somebody and you get emotional. There's things there that we need to look at. And so giving people the permission to do so. And also, when we say not knowing about if I have depression or if I have anxiety, I think that there's two things there. It's just, we haven't talked about it enough for people to really know. And there's such a spectrum of depression and anxiety that I think oftentimes feel like, well, nothing bad enough has happened for me to be that stressed out, so it can't be anxiety. Like for me, that was the case. It was like, everything's fine. I have a roof over my head. The dust has settled with my dad because this was a year after he passed away. I'm in therapy. Like it couldn't possibly be because nothing's stressing me out. And then that's just not the case. And so I think we tend to dismiss or belittle how much we're actually feeling inside. And so we don't think we're quote unquote that bad off, that it could possibly be anxiety or it could possibly be depression or whatever it is. And I think giving yourself the permission to look at it and say, oh, well, maybe I am on the spectrum here of anxiety, or maybe I am on the spectrum here of depression, and allowing that to be okay is part of it.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point that you raised, that we have a tendency to look at our story and then look at somebody else who's in what we deem or perceive as a worse experience, right?
Yes.
So, you know, for me it was, and this was a conversation I had with someone recently, that when my mom was or my stepmom was locking me in closets and burning me with curling irons, I didn't see that as abuse because I wasn't being hit, or I didn't have the bruises, or, you know, I didn't have what other people had. I wasn't constantly living in fear. It was only 2 weekends out of the month, so it wasn't that bad. And I think it's important what you said for people to realize that it doesn't matter what life circumstances are causing it. If that's what you're feeling, that's what you're feeling, and we need to honor that.
Yes. And it took me so long to describe what I went through as trauma because of that exact reason. And something I said to a friend once was that trauma is any experience that then alters how we perceive the world moving forward. So it doesn't, no matter how quote unquote big or small, if it was traumatizing to you, it was a traumatic experience. And it doesn't, we do often compare to other people that, oh, well, I mean, they've gone through it. They had trauma. Me? You know, and so I think being able to take ownership of that is healing in and of itself, in a way, and the first step to being able to get into that healing journey.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say has been the biggest lesson that you personally have learned so far?
Whew, this is such a great question. I think there's a few things. If we're talking about business, the biggest lesson for me was that the worst thing you can do is sit in inaction. The most painful and worst thing to do is to not act. And any action, as messy as it may look, is the best way to start. Best way to get the ball rolling. As far as just life in general, especially with my anxiety, is that this is a daily practice, and it's not something that we ever get over. It's something that we incorporate into our journey. And it's a lifelong journey. And yes, we heal different things and that goes away. But checking in with yourself is a daily habit. And it's one that doesn't have to take 2 hours. It can take a minute. And it doesn't have to even be a journaling if you don't like journaling. But to get into the mindset that this is a habit that we get into has been very helpful to me, because I think when I first started, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to get over it, and then I can move on. And and you do that, and then you just end up going back to the same place because you're not doing your daily check-ins, and so, you know, I just ran into burnout over and over and over again. It's like I got over something, and then I got back into something, and I got over something. So learning to incorporate it and embrace that ride is part of life's journey. And that's one of my biggest takeaways.
Absolutely. And do you find that this kind of core lesson that you keep coming back to around the self-reflection and checking in, it shows up in different ways as you get to different levels of consciousness and life and success?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I think that, as we keep going, new things come up, and you get so much better at going, ooh, that's a thing. You get so much better at recognizing because you get familiar with your body, and you get familiar with what feels like a trigger, and what things trigger you and kind of all of those things, those self check-ins. And as you grow, it's like a tree. You're starting to reach for more things and you're going to touch more things and more things are going to touch you. And so you kind of have to figure out what your branches are touching and process that. And so it just keeps going.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I say to my clients often, that as you heal the level that you're on and the behaviors of that level that you're on, when you go to another level, you'll just uncover another piece of the root of that problem, essentially.
Yes.
And it's just a continuous journey of finding the next weed and pulling it out.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So what would you say has been your biggest win on your journey?
I love this question. My biggest win on this journey has been anytime I get that DM or that email, or I have that breakthrough moment with a client where they start crying. That's a win. Having them say, like, you really touched me today, or this episode really resonated with me, or this got me through a really tough time, or I was feeling really down before I listened to your podcast and now I'm feeling a sense of hope. Like, anytime that my work directly affects somebody's mood in a positive way, that is the most fulfilling. Like, I could die happy. Like, knowing that I've touched one person in a positive way, it's all I need. That's everything to me. And so getting those is absolutely my biggest win.
Beautiful. And how do you celebrate? Do you celebrate those wins? And if you do, how do you celebrate them?
Yes, you have to celebrate everything. Celebration is such an important part of this whole process because, especially if you're in business, like, you're in business to have more freedom. You're in business to help others. You're in business to feel fulfilled. And if you don't celebrate, you belittle the achievement, but you also don't incorporate that fun and play into what you're doing, which is why we kind of start this in the first place, to feel more free and happier and at ease. And so I celebrate, and I celebrate often, and it really depends on the time. It just depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll just get up and do a little happy dance, or I will, give myself an extra hour to read, because I read like a lot. And so one of my favorite things to do is just cuddle up and read a book. So I'll tack on an extra hour of that. Or I don't know, sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'm gonna go to the beach today and I'm just gonna enjoy that. So it kind of just depends on what I'm feeling. But yes, absolutely, I celebrate every single thing. And my own coach asks me, how are you going to celebrate this? And so she asked me how I was going to celebrate graduating, because it took me 10 years to graduate from college, because I was working full time and paying my way through. And I honestly, I told her, I was like, all I want to do is just lay on my bed in complete silence and close the door and just zero disruption. That was really, honestly, that was my celebration, because I was so tired, and really what I was asking for was just rest. And so sometimes rest is my celebration, and extra time to just unwind, and honoring that without guilt is celebration. So if you're feeling guilty, then you're not celebrating truly. And so it's important to have that time.
Absolutely. When you work with your clients in their programs, do you talk to them about celebrating and the importance of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything, every time I work with them, every time we talk, I ask, so how are you going to celebrate? Or I will say, I hope that you're celebrating taking this time. One of the people that I work with, she's like, I'm taking a mental health day. And I was like, I love that. How are you going to honor that decision? Because when I start to see people honoring their mental health and like putting that at the forefront of their work, that is a cause for celebration to even make that decision, because that's not something they did before. And so, yes, short answer, yes, celebration is at the forefront of what I work with. And it makes us happier when we get the chance to celebrate.
Yeah. For me, it's about, just looking at what we focus on expands. And so if we never take the time to celebrate and we just stay in that grind, then everything just always feels like a grind. And it's like telling our unconscious mind that there's just never enough. We've never done enough to reward ourselves or to take that moment to be excited and to be happy. So,
oh my gosh, yes. Yes. It's a one-way ticket to burnout. And then your body forces you to rest. And and then you're out of commission for a while.
Yeah, and that's not even celebrating. Like it's not even a good rest, because it happens when you typically can't take it, or you can't afford to take it. So it's a choice between be intentional, take it, and experience the good of it, or be forced into it and then deal with the consequences that come from it.
Yes, exactly.
What has been your favorite memory or your favorite moment on your journey so far?
My favorite memory. The moment when I realized this is it. I worked for so long, and part of my anxiety came from feeling like I was meant for something more, but not knowing what that more was, and having no idea how to find it. And feeling so like stuck and lost and scared. And it's almost like you're just like treading water in like the abyss of the sea, and there's no land anywhere in sight, and you're just like, where I'm gonna drown here, like this is like and that would cause me a lot of anxiety. And so when I started taking messy action, when I started just throwing stuff at a wall, seeing what stuck, and then being in that first client meeting and seeing that breakthrough and being like, this is it. This is what I finally found out. Like, this feels aligned. This feels true. This is what I'm meant to be doing. Like a huge weight just like fell off my chest. And I was like, oh, I was so scared to do this. I had so much resistance around it, but I did it and it clicked. And that was a great memory. That was such a powerful, great memory.
I love that. And I think that's such a great lesson for other people, is to just take messy action. I love that term.
Yeah, me too.
Because I was just talking to clients this week who were like, well, I'm so scared of making a mistake. And I was like, the biggest mistake you can make is to just do nothing, to not follow up on that opportunity, or to not ask for the sale, or to just sit there. Like, just do something, because then you have more choice. If you don't do anything, you have zero choice.
Absolutely. And honestly, when I think about it, I'm like, okay, if I do nothing, I am exactly where I am right now. And if I do something and I fail, I'm back to where I started, except I'm a step further because I know now what didn't work. And so it's like even failure moves you forward in a way that inaction doesn't. And so I feel like that was the part that had to click for me, was that the ultimate failure is inaction, because you're legitimately just a sitting duck. You're not doing anything, and those feelings never go away. Like we can't talk ourselves out of wanting that desire to find our purpose. Like there's no amount, like you might be afraid to find it, but it never goes away. The only way to remedy that, like, deep pull is to try. And so I think, it's the best thing to do is just try.
Love it. Love it. And so before we wrap up today, what advice would you have for others who are wanting to take the leap, whether that's to take the leap into finding their purpose, into asking for help, into managing their stress better? You can choose where or all the avenues, but what is the number one piece of advice that you want to give people?
Two things. And they go kind of together, but even the seemingly smallest step is still a step. Let that be enough, and get into the mindset of curiosity. And what I mean by that is get curious as to why you do the things you do, why you're drawn to certain things. Get curious about them. I think oftentimes we forget to ask ourselves why we're drawn to something, or maybe we're afraid to ask, like, oh, why do I feel this nudge to take a dance class, or whatever it is. And even if it doesn't seem like it's connecting to anything, it is. And maybe the dance class is pulling you in to have more fun so that you can invite that creativity in and see and get that idea for that thing that you're meant to do, So get into the mindset of curiosity. Why am I feeling triggered right now? What just happened? Why am I feeling the need to move right now? Why am I feeling the need to start a podcast? Get curious and enjoy that curiosity. Kids are so curious, and that's why they're so full of wonder and awe. And we lose that when we grow up, but we don't ever stop craving that curiosity, if that makes sense. So cultivate that curiosity and set the intention to use that curiosity to build the life that you want.
I love it. I think the one of the worst, like, cliche sayings is curiosity killed the cat, because I think it halts so many people from getting curious and exploring, whether it's their own mind or a passion or a talent or an opportunity. It just, that just continuously comes up for people. Well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and curiosity killed the cat. So those are like my two least favorite sayings in the world, because it just stunts people more than you ever know, more than they even know.
Yeah. And it also, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, like, you never stop wondering what's around the corner.
Yeah.
The only way that you're gonna find out what's around the corner, the only way you're gonna ease that wonder is by looking around the corner. And it's a risk, but you have to. And curiosity doesn't always kill the cat.
No.
So I agree. It's a huge stunt. It's a huge stunting phrase that we learn.
Yeah. I think we need to rewrite it into mediocrity killed the cat. That sounds better.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Staying stuck killed the cat. The cat who got curious lives an awesome life.
Yeah, it's true. Because if the cat was stuck, they wouldn't survive. They have to go out and explore and figure out how to, catch the mice and do all the things. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Best way to find me is on Instagram. The handle is Jenna dot, like a little period, and then Monaco. And that's where I hang out. That's where I spend most of my time. And then all of my links for my community, the podcast community, the podcast itself, website, all of that's in my bio on Instagram. So come find me, come hang out with me.
And we'll have all of that in our show notes for people as well.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been awesome. As always, I feel like you and I could just talk for days.
I do too. I really do. I so enjoy talking to you. I was so excited for this. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you again and also talk to your community. I'm so grateful.
My pleasure. We'll be back next week with another episode to help you take the leap into living your best life. We'll talk to you then.